welcome to this week in the world of wrestling.
Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary Ashton, and this is our Monday Night Raw review. And I gotta say, guys, Raw for me kind of rebounded from last week. You know, I was pretty contemptible of last week's Raw. Really didn't enjoy it that much. This week, though, I gotta say, some great segments. Got some storyline progression, some phenomenal matchups, and overall, the pacing of the show, a lot of the time, really seemed to be on point. Those 3 hours actually seemed to fly by, more or less. But then again, myself and my cohort and commentary had a great time just interacting with each other, watching the product, so that could be attributable to that. But I enjoyed this show overall. Ashton, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, man, this was definitely a rebound, like you said, from last week's show. I didn't really like a lot of things about last week's show, and there were a few things about this week's show that were kind of cringy, but on the whole, I would definitely say this was an improvement. Like, if I had to do the 1 out of 10 or 1 to 10 scale, this was maybe like a 7. If I had to push it, it would maybe be like a 7.5.
Right, yeah, that sounds about right for me. I would echo that sentiment. With that said, let's get right into our first segment, Heat of the Night. I gotta say, nothing really bothered me, about this show tonight. I felt like if I had one nitpick, and this is like really trying, I felt like the closing segment really dragged on way too long. I kind of got over it, after a few minutes.
I mean, I would say that like the closing segment dragged on in the same way that the Ambrose Rollins ladder match at TLC or at Money in the Bank dragged on. Like, it should have ended, and then the other guy just came back out of nowhere, and then it ended again.
Exactly. So yeah, that would probably be my only nitpick from tonight, because everything else, even some segments that kind of had me sweating bullets a little bit, I feel like they handled tremendously. So yeah, no complaints here. What about you, Ash? Any heats of the night tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I personally, the only real two things. First of all, and I don't know if you want to call these heat of the night or nitpick or whatever, but first of all, the Divas thing with Paige still being stupid enough to try and take on all 3 of these girls at the same time. I can't get behind that, because all you're doing is making your top babyface diva, and really your only babyface diva at this point, look really stupid.
Right.
But then the other thing is, of course, the Lana Ziggler thing. I mean, an angle is bad when out of the 4 people involved in it, the least cringy talker is Summer Rae.
You know what? I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because I should have brought that up on my end. I just do not care for this storyline at all, and it's weird.
I am not even joking, John, when I tell you that when Lana was cutting her half of the going public promo, I was getting physically uncomfortable to the point that I was like rolling in my seat, like trying to I don't even know what to call it, but like I wanted to just like mute the television or change the channel or something. It was that bad.
I've been there, dude, and I've been there with this angle, so I completely understand where you're coming from. I remember one line I said to you that I even said to you I wanted to remember for TWitWoW here. I like all 4 people involved. I just don't like them interacting with each other. And I think that's what makes this so hard, because, I love Ziggler. I think Lana still has a great potential as a babyface diva. Summer Rae, I feel like, she to me was far more entertaining on NXT. I mean, she wasn't anything extraordinary or anything, but I think compared to what she's doing now, she's just another one-note diva, and I do believe she can be more than that. And Rusev, I mean, I thought the world of Rusev. I think I gave him I gave him my Rookie of the Year, our last TWitWoW End of the Year awards. So I still think Rusev is an incredible upside. It's just, this is not working. And I'm glad you mentioned, too, the idea of calling this like a going public segment. Going public about what? Like, we know that you guys have been into each other for weeks. Like, this is not news to anybody. I even mentioned to you, and you said that you actually thought that it would have made a better storyline. It would have been cool if, like, maybe the dissension between Lana and Rusev wasn't just the idea of Rusev blaming his losses on Lana, but that maybe Lana was seeing somebody on the side because Rusev was being more abrasive, more caustic in his treatment of her. And then she goes and finds solace and, love elsewhere. And then it's a big reveal, and then it's revealed to be Dolph Ziggler. But we know how you two feel about each other, and I can't get behind it at all, man. It just really makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I mean, now that I think about it, I actually had another thing that I was kind of. I don't really necessarily want to call it a heat of the night or like even a full blown nitpick.
Right.
Just Sheamus going over Neville, I am not a fan of. I mean, I get that you want to keep Sheamus legit, and I mean, first of all, it would be the first time in a while that you kept a Money in the Bank holder legit. But second of all, I just don't think Neville was the right guy to do it. I mean, I get that Neville, quote unquote, took Sheamus to the limit, but Neville took John Cena to the limit, and it's pretty safe to say that John Cena's ranking is above Sheamus right now.
Yeah.
So for Neville to just take Sheamus to the limit is not enough, in my opinion.
I was really hoping, and see, this kind of ties in, and thank you, because I was ready to let this Raw go away scot-free, and I still enjoyed it, guys. Don't let this opening segment fool you. I mean, I still had fun with the show, but I mean, Randy Orton returned from vacation tonight. I wouldn't have known it because he didn't appear on the show.
Yeah.
You know, like, I thought it would have been great. I mean, because you already had Sheamus lose to Dean Ambrose because of it. Have Orton run in and have him cost Sheamus yet another matchup because Sheamus cost Orton, his last bout, if I remember correctly. Have him even the score. You have your match for Battleground, and we get over this hump. Maybe WWE's decided to scrap the feud altogether, in which case I wouldn't mind. And I was even saying from the jump, I feel like the feud should have been Neville Sheamus. But I think that's kind of what makes this loss leave somewhat of a bad taste in my mouth, and that's why I could be sympathetic to your gripe, because these guys aren't even in a program with each other right now. This is just a thrown together matchup. And in one way it makes sense because they're resolving the issue of, at Money in the Bank, it came down to these two guys, but it wasn't even about that. It's just, Altitude Era versus Celtic Warrior, and, it kind of sells. I guess the arena gets them pumped. I'm often very praiseworthy of how WWE has handled Neville, and I still think in the grand scheme of things, he is one of the better prospects to come through. But it's very discouraging to me that he's got no story or angle right now, and up until this point, what he was doing prior was teaming with the tag team champions. I think the next thing now should be, I mean, I saw they came out with a comic book for Neville, a WWE comic book, which I think is very cool, really pushing this idea of the Altitude Era. I love that, man. I dig that. It's not going to mean anything, though, if we don't give this guy a direction going forward. So I hope post-Battleground, we get him into some kind of a storyline or feud that's a bit higher caliber. Because, a lot of that whole matchup and everything that you're talking about just raises even more red flags to me that I'm starting to take note of, so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's about all I have to say negative about this show. So if we want to get into our next segment.